Welcome to the Truth and Grace Counseling Podcast. Truth and Grace Counseling exists to provide clarity from a biblically informed perspective in order to help individuals engage life faithfully. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Truth and Grace Counseling Podcast. In today's episode, I announce whether my wife and I are having a boy or a girl. Now, don't cheat. Don't look ahead. Let me know right now in the comments what you think it is, boy or a girl. You'll find out soon, I promise. I also finished the conversation with the Truthful therapist. If you didn't watch the first part, go down in the description below and look at the first episode. In the last word segment, I talk about a word that's going to help you work through difficult moments in your life. I'll meet you at the water cooler. The water cooler. Hi, and welcome to the water cooler. For today, I don't have a cup, I got a mug. This is from Viridian Coffee in Duncan, Oklahoma. It's a cool little custom mug. Every once in a while in their coffee shop, they'll have different mugs made there. So I don't actually have anything in it today. So just showing off a mug. So as I said in the intro, we found out the gender of our new child. So without further ado, we are having a boy. So this makes 2 boys that we'll have. I have an 18-month-old boy and then a girl that's 3 years old. So super excited about having another boy. We know that my son's going to be excited to have a little brother to play around with. And my daughter is super excited this go around. She gets to really understand what's going on. She's looking in the app that my wife has of just the development that her brother's having. And she's just really excited to have another brother. So happy news in our house. Another thing I wanted to announce today is a project I'm working on. So I'm working on behind the scenes making a new website for the podcast. I don't have a domain for it yet. I'm hoping by the next podcast that I will be able to announce that to you all. So be looking forward to that in 2 weeks. If I get a little bit bogged down and don't have it quite up and ready, I'll let you know. But I'm planning on having it done in the next couple weeks. So a couple things that will be different on this website is, one, I'm going to have all of the episodes listed with all of their show notes. So if you don't know what show notes are, that's all the links that I have down in the description below. Like for this one, I'll have information about Pamela's website, Truthful Therapist, and things like that. So we'll have all of those listed kind of in a blog type of format. But I also have transcriptions for each podcast episode. And really the big benefit of this is if somebody comes across my website and they're on their phone and they're not really in a position to where they can listen to the podcast, maybe they're in public somewhere, having the transcription will allow them to kind of scroll through the blog post and be able to read what's going on. So I'm excited to add that onto the website. Then I also have a couple new ways, aside from the donation link that I talked about before, that you can help monetarily support the show. And before I get more into that, I just wanted to let you know that you don't have to give money to support the show. Something as simple as liking this video, subscribing, giving me a good review on any of the podcast platforms you might listen to the show, letting your friends know about this, posting this on social media, all of that. That doesn't cost you a dime, and that really does go a long way towards supporting the show. So don't feel like I'm pressuring anybody to having to send me any money. That being said, I'm going to provide a couple different ways that you can help support the show aside from donation. One is I'm working on a merch shop. So I'm going to have I'm working on a mug, my own mug that I can have for sale there, a t-shirt and a few other items. Let me know down in the comments if there's any particular types of merchandise that you would like to have. I don't want this just to be a fundraiser to get me money. I want these to be useful products for you. So feel free to let me know your thoughts on that. And then the other way that you can help support in a monetary sense is I'm going to include a recommendation section on the website. So the way that this works is through affiliate marketing. If you're not aware what that is, basically it's I put a link up on the site, or honestly, they're down in the description below in this video even, and you click on it, and most of these are going to be to Amazon. So then you go to Amazon, and then whatever item I have on there, if you buy it, It is no added cost to you. It just takes you to Amazon like normal. But I actually get a little bit of a kickback from that. I get some commissions. So I'm going to have a recommendation section there on the website of different books and home living items and just different things that I think that could be useful for your life. And again, I'll include that. Hey, I'm getting some kickback on this. I'm not trying to hide this from anyone. And this is part of why I wanted to make a podcast only website. I don't really feel comfortable ethically having something like that where I'm getting kickbacks on my counseling webpage. So I wanted to have this a little bit separate. But know that you're not just giving money to help support me. Just like with my practice and with my donation link, with my merchandise, and also through the affiliate links, 10% of all proceeds go to Charis Center in Duncan, Oklahoma. So this is something that's really important to me in my practice, that I want to support a local place like this that helps support women that are in a pretty difficult spot, that have a unwanted pregnancy, and we want to help provide them with resources to make them as successful as possible in their pregnancy. So that's really important to me. So know that when you're supporting the show, you're not just supporting me, you're also supporting them. And as always, if you want to skip me and just go right to supporting Charis, I've got their link down below, so feel free to click that and support them. All right, with that, I'll meet you at the meat section. The meat section. Hey, welcome to the meat section. This is the second of a 2-part series that I talk with the Truthful therapist. If you want to see the first part, which was on the last episode of the Truth and Grace Counseling podcast, please click the link below where you can listen to that. Enjoy.
Robin, this is not, it's really tough to watch.
I had seen some of your post about being there, which again I think is fantastic. For one, that you're showing up, despite the negative insults that will be hurled your way. It's not a question of if, they will, no doubt. But to have that type of courage to face that and still do it anyways, and the more that happens, the more there's that pushback. I know we don't see it right now, but I really think this thing is going to be crumbling down on the gender thing, especially because it's so blatantly obvious. At least with systemic racism and stuff, you can at least see, okay, there's some basis of logic that could potentially be there. Now, I disagree with all of that, but I could see where someone could come to that conclusion. The boy and girl thing is as blatant as could be. And to take that away, to rip away that type of innocence from children especially, is just evil. I don't know what other word to say other than evil.
It's terrible. I mean, and how I mean, there's so much about it, but it's destroying them psychologically and then destroying them physically, destroying their abilities to have pleasure in the future, destroying their abilities to have families in the future. I mean, this is evil stuff, really evil stuff.
I had a run in, and now granted, I have since changed my strategy because I think I'm new to this. I'm new to kind of public eye, which I'm still really not much public eye, but having YouTube videos and things like that. But what was striking to me is, again, Ruby Red, Oklahoma, had a video about pronouns, and my issue on me looking back over it wasn't the content of it. The content of it, I think, was spot on, because this stuff it's terrible. I don't care that you can say pronoun usage. Oh, well, we're not actually mutilating the child, so it's no big deal. No, it's still that's grooming behavior, and you're going to get there with that type of reaction. So I wasn't sorry about that. I like to take things kind of lighthearted and be a little funny. So there's a Elon Musk and Rachel Levine thing in there, and that I'm probably not going to do that stuff anymore, because that did not hit very well with a certain demographic. And in Oklahoma, of all places, just I got lambasted with, like, conversion therapy, you're discriminating, like you name it,
Really, even
thrown my
there.
way. Yeah. Oh
See,
yeah.
that's and that yeah, I mean, and you're probably familiar with the whole mass formation psychosis
Yep.
concept. I mean, I never again. And by the way, I'm Jewish. I grew up learning about the Holocaust and
Mhm.
all of that. I went to the Holocaust Museum in Israel, Yad Vashem, and I was really educated on that stuff. And my whole life, I sincerely, as a naive person who's never encountered that sort of thing, I've never understood how that could happen. I really,
Yeah.
really, truly never understood. And now, I mean, I hate the whole like Holocaust comparison. You can
Sure.
compare it to a lot of other horrible things that's happened in history, right? Like communism and in China. And I
Sure.
never understood how all these terrible things have happened in the world. And now I get it.
Yeah.
Now I get it. I just can't believe it. And what's been so hard for me to wrap my head around is people that I know, people in my family, people who I thought were my friends, are calling me names or ostracizing me or going along with it or
Yeah.
encouraging these things that are clearly harmful because the media is telling them something. And
Yeah.
I just didn't, I thought people had more critical thinking skills. And I didn't realize what followers people were.
Uh, no doubt. And I think this is why the gender issue specifically, we talked about some systematic racism, CRT, all that stuff. That's important. Don't get me wrong. I think that's very important. But this is absolutely the line that I think of no return. If you lose this issue, truth just absolutely does not matter in your culture. Um, give you a silly example of how, before I get myself into too much trouble, are there people that like legitimately struggle with gender dysphoria? Yes, and they're actually the ones that I feel the most sorry for in all of this because they're not getting treatment. But for the vast majority of people that question gender or whatever, it's going to be like something like my daughter that the other day, she's 3, um, and my son is 1, so we got a boy and a girl. They've taken baths together and stuff. So gender stuff, like it's pretty easy to see which one's the boy, which one's the girl. It's really not complicated. And my daughter, Natalie's her name, has been times she says, "I'm a boy," and we said, "No, you're not," and she says, "No, I'm a boy." Okay. And then tomorrow she wears her pretty dress, and it's not a big deal. We move on. Um, and to watch some of those, I'm kind of like you. I try to keep libs of TikTok stuff to a minimum, because it just fries my brain.
Yes.
But I saw one a while back where this boy was like 2 or 3 and didn't want to get his hair cut, so they're gonna call him a girl. It's like, of course he didn't want a haircut. Like this is just destruction of civilization, and I try not to be hyperbolic like that, but
I see it that way too. I
it just
try not to
is.
be too. I mean, I just see like a dystopian nightmare is what I see. And actually, I just wrote a Substack on this, and I had to cater my language because I was getting really really new about it, and I had to just sort of rule it back a little bit. But yeah, I mean, all of the transhumanism stuff we're headed towards,
Mhm.
just the destruction of society. James Lindsay talks about this a lot. He's like, yeah, I talked about CRT, but it's this queer theory stuff that's going to destroy us.
No doubt.
It's either going to destroy mankind or the Western world, or we're going to beat it. Those are two options.
Uh, I think that's part of what's just so striking again in my personal life is now I've always known what a boy and a girl is. Again, it's super basic, but to have a little boy and to have a little girl and see them side by side, my girl, every day she has to wear, quote, a beautiful dress, and my boy, he sees a tiger and goes rawr. Like it's just, it's so easy, and that's what blows my mind on this. Like, shield them from queer theory, and the vast 99.999% of this junk goes away. Just let them
Yeah,
be. You don't have
exactly.
to do anything.
Exactly. Yeah. And the woman we were protesting, her name is Rachel Pepper in Davis. She wrote this book, she wrote it back in 2008. And in there, she writes about how toddlers know their gender and what to do. And of course, her advice is to affirm their new gender. This was back in 2008.
Yeah.
And so she was the guest speaker at their district on Wednesday. They were going to have it in person, but actually they changed it to online because of the backlash. So that's probably a good sign.
Yeah. What would you, with this, and I know we talked about this before, of you know, this stuff's bad. Yes, it's very, very bad. And I think having a form of righteous anger is actually a really good thing. I'm not going to say, hey, let's threaten people or try to hit people or whatever. But if there was a drag queen event for kids in my hometown, you better believe there's going to be a huge protest out there. And that's a good thing. Like,
That's
you
good.
need to have that type of backlash. So I don't want to say that anger in and of itself is a bad thing. It's really not. But that should only be that reaction part. And then we need to shift that into action, not just react to bad things, actually act. So somebody, a conservative therapist, or just someone that's not driven by ideology, or not even a therapist at all, that someone's just tired of this cultural view that we're in right now, what would be your advice to them? What should they do with this anger, this upsetness?
Well, I think for one, they need to not be afraid to speak up about it. And it doesn't need to be on the internet. I mean, we're on the internet now doing this, but that's not for everyone. I think you need to talk to your friends and family about it and not be afraid of someone calling you a name, because that is empty stuff. And so you said I'm so brave or whatever. Maybe I was in the beginning, but honestly, I've gotten used to it. You get used to it because it becomes really empty and meaningless when they just throw a name at you and then they have nothing else to say. And then you do change minds, because then you also find the people that agree with you that have been in hiding. So I think the more people that speak up just in their circles, I think that makes a big difference. I think it depends on where you work or what your expertise is. I think it'd be great. I was just thinking about this the other day. Someone was asking me about some children's books to sort of counter the narrative. And there are some out there. Matt Walsh wrote one. There's a agency called Advocates for Protecting Children. They've written a few children's books. Someone's asking me specifically for an adolescent. I didn't know of one. And then I was thinking about how just in Hollywood, how it's not just a book on that particular message. There's those too. But how it just should be just interweaved as a side story, or just our values should be represented. Like, love yourself for who you are in some shape or form. And to integrate that into art, into what you're doing. And if you have kids, I think, unfortunately, I used to say, like, just shield them from it and don't say anything. Unfortunately, now kids are going to encounter this no matter what. So I do think it's important to talk to your kids about it and tell them that if you're asked to introduce your pronouns, you don't have to do it. And in fact, when you do it, it's not as nice as they think it is. And explain some of the reasons why, that it causes confusion. It makes people not know what's going on. And it makes kids feel uneasy and anxious. It stops people from being able to connect from who they really are, because they're changing their identities all the time. Like, these aren't always nice things.
Right.
So, to help explain, and I actually wrote some of this up in my little guide, but to actually age appropriately talk to your children about some of this stuff to get ahead of it, because unfortunately it's going to hit them. And I think probably even in the red states, it's going to hit them, because
no doubt,
if not in person, they're going to see it online, or they're going to see it on a Netflix show. Scooby-Doo has it in it right now. Like, Blue's Clues has it in it. Like, Network has it. It's everywhere. So, but yeah, I think whatever profession you're in, if you could try to speak up about it there, like if you're in the medical profession or if you're in some kind of creative profession, to speak up about it with your colleagues and figure out it. And if it's being forced on you, like, decline putting pronouns in your bio or on your email, like let's just stop. Stop and then counter it, I guess. But be respectful. And not be angry. Like, I like how Moms for Liberty has this little slogan where they say they're joyful warriors.
I like
So like
that.
be joyful. And try not to, when you find, like when I find myself being negative, I try to pull back. Like I don't want to attack anyone. I'm not here to attack anyone. Even people I disagree with, I'm not here to attack them. If
Yeah.
they're attacking me, I withdraw from them. I'm not even against people who do, adults who identify as trans. I talk to some. Many of them are against this also. In fact, they're hating on this more because this is giving them a bad name. I think that's
Mm.
another piece of the agenda is I think they're trying to create more angst and hate against trans people so that there is some kind of crime or violence so that they can prop it up as, see, there's so much trans hate out there. We need to
Yeah.
do more to protect them and do more to, and then all the virtue signals are like, I'm not one that hates and I accept you. And then
Right.
it just circles. So there's more division now, I think, between
Yeah.
everyone. There's even division, unfortunately, in the people that are fighting against this, which is sad and frustrating because people have different lines that they want to keep in terms of who is okay and who isn't, or who we should be protecting, whatever.
Right.
So I guess, well, my advice is, that was rambly, is
That's okay.
speak up and
Yeah.
find your place. So I realized for me, I realized even though I'm kind of on disability, I lost my job, I'm not even practicing right now, that my role, as with over 20 years of experience in the mental health field, that I needed to speak up as a mental health professional. I was originally just about all the politics, right? And I realized like that wasn't productive. Like I actually have a certain point of view and certain experience that other people don't have. So I realized that's where my place is. But everyone has a place. Like if you're an artist, if you're a writer, if you're in tech, if you're just a human being, like, and you see the problems, to
Yep.
speak out and figure out where is your place. There are already a lot of groups that have formed that you could join if that those are groups that you feel like you can fit in. Like I'm in with the Mom Army. There's Moms for Liberty. There's lots of different places you could join. And then maybe you could do your own project. I think a lot of what's going to help is, unfortunately, we're going to have to build our own things. These
Yeah.
institutions around us are crumbling. You build your own practice here, alongside of what's happening because you don't agree with what's happening in the institutions. I think we're going to need more and more of that. I think we're going to have to come together more at the same time, but being creative and I appreciate the comedians that are doing comedy against this. So it's not just serious. We're not just
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
gloom and doom about it. Like I think there's all different ways we can combat this stuff and to get our message out.
I think what's really important in what you were saying there is it's not complicated. Like we don't have to have somebody that's going to rise up and be our great leader and just fix it all. Like, no, just talk to your kids. We,
Yeah,
we have a we have a book. We have a book. It's oh, God made boys, God made girls, something like that. Real simple. It's there's girls, there's boys. They're different. And that's about it. But that helps protect them because I know for certain if my kids, which we're going to homeschool our kids, and that's a whole other
that's
conversation
another
out
way
there
to
too.
keep
Yeah,
them out of schools.
that's I'd never in a million years thought I would be beating that drum, but here I am, no doubt about it. So
Mhm.
there are some specific things, but just say something. Just get the get the people around you, your kids, your spouse, your coworkers, whoever it may be around you, and those things that you're secretly liking, just say it out loud. Like that. That's really that's really it. You don't have to upplant yourself and do something massive. Do we have some other infrastructure things that would be helpful? Yeah, absolutely. And surround yourself with other groups of people, sure. But you don't have to spend thousands of dollars and do some big thing. Just tell your kids that boys are boys and girls are girls. That's a start.
That's
And
good.
then go from there.
I'm an old school liberal that grew up in like the 70s and 80s, and I always liked Free to Be You and Me. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Uh-uh.
It's I mean, honestly, it was a liberal show, and it's from the mid '70s, And there's this little sketch with these babies, and they're newborns, and they talk about they're talking about basically breaking some gender roles and whatnot, and they're little babies. And then at the very end of the skit, because they're like, no, I'm a boy, no, I'm a boy, or I'm a girl, and they didn't know. And then at the very end, they have the nurse comes and changes their diaper, and then they go, oh, look at that, I'm a girl, and then the boy goes, look at that, I'm a boy, see, because they're talking about, and there was more of honestly a liberal point of view where boys can be dancers or have more.
Sure.
They could do things that girls would typically want or want to wear a dress, but that doesn't make them not a boy. And then the girl, I think she was saying she wanted to be a fireman and or a fire person. I don't know how they put it then. But they still said, but I'm a boy and I'm a girl, because when they got their diapers changed.
Yeah.
And so that's the other message. So when kids don't necessarily conform into what's traditional gender roles, that does not make them the opposite sex. And I think that's a very strong message, because we're kind of regressing back to these like really old stereotypes of what a boy exactly should be and what exactly a girl should be. And generally speaking, that is the case, that most girls and boys fall into those traditions or those stereotypes. But there's the people that don't, and then they are the ones that feel as though they don't fit in. And then I think they're more vulnerable to being believing that they're trapped in the wrong body or something like that.
Yeah.
And they're being told that instead of being said, no, you're just a girl who likes to play with trucks, and that's fine. So
yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I was going to say some Jordan Peterson statistics he said once. I would butcher it, so I'm not going to say it, but it's much more of a, here's these percentages. You're going to have 66% of engineers are males. I think it's much higher than that. You're going to have 80% of nurses that are females. But it's never 100-0 for like any of those. My typically, women tend to be more inclined to be in social sciences, be more into counseling, emotional type of things. My wife would be the worst counselor. You would not want to visit her. She would just say, stop it, get over it. Like that, she's not super empathetic in that way. That doesn't mean she's a man or that I'm a woman. Like you're saying, I'm still a man. I just have on that one trait is more feminine than what other traits that I have that are more masculine. But we've conflated that, a more masculine or feminine trait, into, oh, well, gender's just this big knob and we can twist it here, twist it there. No, it's static. And
exactly.
And it's easy. That's again, you change the diaper. There you go. There's your answer.
I'll post it on Twitter so you can see.
Okay. Yeah. No, I would appreciate that for sure. But again, I think that's the big takeaway from this. Just say something. And I guess kind of a question for you on that. When you first decided to really start posting things, saying things out loud, was it hard for you that first go round to actually stand up and say something?
Well, I think I went through stages. So I had this other account where I didn't have my name and my face. And so I started it out that way.
Okay.
And then when I did it, it wasn't so hard because I didn't realize at that time I'd already been sort of canceled by my friends and by the job. So I had less to lose. I'd say the hard part was just making videos and speaking to the camera.
Sure.
Those technical things. I'm not good at that. I kept stumbling. I kept like I'm having these sort of silly outtakes. But that's not really what you're asking. It's about shy, it was about being shy and not having the practice and feeling like I didn't have the ability to speak clearly. I look at all these really well-poised people and how well they speak, but of course they're that way because they've gotten a lot of practice.
Absolutely.
And I'm getting more practice. I'm not a expert speaker, but so it's gotten easier. I remember at first when people would call me names, it would really get to me. And then now I'm used to it. So it doesn't as much. So that's changed. It was hard telling my family or talking to my family about it. It still is, to be honest. and they just avoid the topic, and it kind of hurts me. But it's sort of a sad state of, it's something I've had to accept, which is not easy.
Sure. I think that's probably going to be true in most cases where those intimate relationships are going to be the more difficult ones because we care about them more. But just like you had said there, if that starting point is I have a completely anonymous account and I'm just posting stuff, I'm kind of, it's almost that exposure therapy type of thing. I'm getting used to this level of anxiety, putting myself out there. Just again, do something. And I promise you it's going to be worth it. Because if you chose not to say anything, you didn't say anything to your family, it's still in there. It's not like it went anywhere. I just haven't said anything yet.
Yeah. I mean, I feel I'm the kind of person, like, I need to be myself. I feel like I'm the best and worst of both worlds because I still have the bleeding heart liberal piece inside of me, but now, well, it's not worse, but I have the conservative point of view where I've learned that a lot of these things that I was taught were helping, like we'll just say welfare programs and things like that, I thought were helping people, at least to some level, I've learned has done way more damage. So now I'm like, oh, well, all the things I was told was helpful is hurting. So now I have the bleeding heart liberal personality with all this knowledge, and all the people that are implementing this stuff won't listen to me. It's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is tough. No doubts to face that level of rejection and things like that. But yeah, if it takes me sacrificing truth, it takes me sacrificing my value system, my morals to keep relationships, we have to really ask ourselves, like, is this a healthy relationship? Is
They're
this
not
something that
real.
really needs to be here?
I mean, I learned that too, just the liberal mindset. And Thomas Sowell actually talks about this, how liberals care about the society more than they care about the people in their lives or their family. And he has a quote about that. I don't know what it is directly, but I remember when I was really disabled, I was in severe pain. And that was around the time when there was that like hat march happening in 2017. And I remember my one friend, who is not my friend anymore, getting mad at me because I wasn't going to the march and I didn't care about things when I couldn't barely tie my shoes at the time. And she never came over to visit me. I mean, she eventually did. And then that was the last time I saw her because I wasn't enthusiastic about fighting the Planned Parenthood funding or whatever else cause she thought was important. And what's strange is at the time I was sort of on her side about things, or at least somewhat. I didn't disagree entirely, and I wasn't against it. I think neutral, and I really wasn't informed enough. And I just didn't have an opinion. And I think even just not having an opinion was offensive to her. And I wasn't good enough to be her friend, even though I really needed her. And she had just gotten married soon before that, where I was like involved in her wedding and helping. And
Man.
I even like gave her like stuff to use for her wedding and supported her through like the stress of her wedding. And we were close. And we haven't spoken to her since 2017. And I feel like that was like part of my learning curve, is watching how people care about society in this way, which, and I've realized what the way they think is helping is not. But even if it is, or they believe it is, but also they stop caring about their own friends.
Yeah.
I had this other best friend too, where she just, same thing. I saw her online going to that march, but she never reached out to me to see how I'm doing, even though I was posting about how I was in severe pain. I had to drop out of work, and I was alone and scared and sad, and we were best friends. And she actually wrote to me once and just said, I think about writing to you. And then I realized that like, it's hard. I know it's hard for you to email, because at the time I couldn't use my hands very well. So it's hard to email. So she said, then I just don't reach out to you.
Well, that's helpful.
What friend is that? And then I remember just crying, and that was part of my wake up too. Was just watching how people are, how they act, like they care so much about people and they care so much about society, and then when someone they're supposed to care about in their life, they drop the ball. Maybe because it's too hard for them. I mean, I don't know, but that's a trend, and Thomas Sowell talked about that. So.
Reminds me of a quote. I'm not even sure who said it, but something along the lines of they want to change the world, but they haven't even changed a diaper, and
Yeah.
it's just that mentality. Yeah, society, we're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix income inequality or whatever it might be, but yeah, there's that old grandma across the street that needs help with their yard. Why don't you help
Yeah,
that first?
that's it. Yeah, and Jordan Peterson talks about that, right? Like clean up your own house first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's I just my whole worldview, my naivete has really just the bubble just bursted after
Yeah.
everything I went through, both physically and then politically, and yeah, and now being online, it's just this I'm just constantly growing, and I'm no spring chicken, and I still have lots to learn, and
Yeah.
I think that's what I like about myself. Like I have humility, and that's what and I
Mhm.
didn't know that that was something that people didn't have, that they aren't open to learning new things. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's something that, a lot on the conservative side, I catch myself sometimes that, okay, I have a lot basically, I agree with Democrats on, like, nothing. So it's easy for me to have some disagreement there, but I think it's more important some of the disagreements I have on more the conservative side of things, whether it be politically or, in my case, just more kind of ideologically or, just kind of your mindset that, yeah, well, we got it all figured out over here. So you just, well, around these parts will be, you just stay to California, get out of here, get out of this part of the state, stay in California, don't infect us. We got it made. We're perfect. And from a lot of the stories I just shared with you, clearly we don't have it all figured
mm-mm.
out. That there's a lot of problems going on. So having that humility to look at, yeah, what's going wrong here? What's going wrong in your house? You might, yeah, are your kids, are they on TikTok and looking at all these ideologies, things like that? If you don't know if they are or not, they probably are. So get your own house in order, just like Jordan Peterson's saying there, get your own life in order instead of just, boy, that liberal person over there is crazy, right? Like
Yeah,
that's not super helpful to point how crazy that person is when you've got your own problems. Get your own problems fixed first.
definitely. And then also recognize that you're not invincible to these problems. I mean, unfortunately, California has they've they've infected they're infected the whole country. So um, you can't pretend it's not happening.
No. And in a lot of ways, it's actually a little bit, I think, a little bit more difficult. And in Oklahoma, Texas, this part of the country, of being a conservative and being vigilant, as it would be being more of a conservative in California. It's pretty blatant in your case of like, okay, that guy over there, the one that's got the American flag out front, that probably can hang with them. Like it's just a little bit easier to dissect some of that. Where here, if you're a Republican, you're going to win the race. Like that's almost verbatim across the board. But what are they really like? Like,
Yeah,
do they really have your best interest in mind? And in many, many cases, that is not the case. So we just sit back, relax. No, we're good here. When we've got the same ideologies, we've got the same type of teachers, all of that stuff is happening in rural Oklahoma. You just aren't aware that it's going on.
yeah. I mean, I actually it's interesting because when I am talking to an open-minded Democrat, by the way, I was one for most of my life, but when they're like, "I'll never be a Republican" or whatever, I'm like, I just want you to know that most Republicans don't like Republican politicians either,
Yeah.
because they'll be like, "Well, this person did this and this person that did that," and I'll be like, a lot of people don't like what like Trump did or said, or they don't like what so and so. I mean, I don't want to name all these names, but like it
Sure.
just because someone um, affiliates as a Republican doesn't mean they like their party. In fact, that's the big difference is Democrats are blindly just follow everything. Like
Yeah.
even when someone's a like sleeps with a Chinese spy or sniffs
That wouldn't
little
happen.
children's hair or does all these crazy things like I mean, obviously, one, they don't hear about it, but two, even when they do finally hear about it, they just like, oh, well, it's better than
Yep.
Trump,
Yep.
so it's fine. Even though it's wildly crazy.
Yeah.
So, but Republicans don't do that. They'll at least talk wise, they'll hold their officials accountable and say, I don't like that. Everyone's a rhino, right? I mean, so
Yeah.
that's like both the weakness and strength of people who are Republican, I'd say,
Sure.
is that they don't stand behind their candidates, but then at the same time, they also hold them accountable. So,
Sure. Sure. And I think that's again where I'm really beating this drum of, if you're looking at conservatism, I find it so much more impactful to have that in your life, in your personal life, in your home, in your work, than in the polls. Like, not trying to say to not vote, like voting and all that stuff is very, very important for sure. Um, and I think our policies dictated by our officials, we're seeing that they're extremely impactful. So yes, that's important. But I can sit here and this is actually really ironic, during the Biden presidency, which there's been like nothing that I've agreed with that administration about. And I say that somewhat facetiously, but truthfully, like it's just like every week, like, no, that's dumb.
me
But
too.
I look at my life. I I actually am really enjoying things right now. I'm enjoying going out on my own. My family's doing great. We just bought some property, looking at building out on an acreage. Like, there's a lot going great in my life right now, and I'm not letting stupid policy decisions. While yes, they have an effect on me, no doubt, but I'm not letting that bog me down to where I'm just on Fox News and yelling at the TV all day.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not helpful.
not helpful.
Yeah, we
Again,
gotta stay positive and constructive, I'll say. We gotta stay constructive.
yes. So
Mhm.
again, using that anger, that we should be angry when we see some of these things, yes, but use it to direct you to be more courageous, to be more open about sharing your beliefs by getting your own life in order. If your life's a mess and you're just doing nothing all day, you're super depressed. Obviously, I'm a counselor, so I would love for you to get some mental help to go to a counselor. But aside from that, like, do something.
Yeah.
Pick up a book. Go exercise. Um, I just think we're in such a culture that we want something from the outside to fix us, whether it's Trump, whether the other end, if it's Obama, like whoever it might be, when you've got tools to fix a lot of stuff, not everything, but a lot of things on your own, if you would just do something.
And what you just said is a conservative value, and I didn't know that before. So what you just said is take personal responsibility,
Yep.
right? And I didn't know I was supposed to not think that. I thought that was a general value for everyone, for Americans, right? To work hard and take responsibility for your life. And now I've learned that's more of and to say, not Democrat value. It's a conservative value. I didn't know that before. I didn't get that memo before.
Yeah. And and I don't know if that always was that case. I don't think so. I think what's happening is we had a I usually heard people say our country generally has been a center right type of country. You have some people that are more center left, some just pure center, more a little bit more right, a little bit more left, but always been somewhere in that little circle there. And through many means, policies, and I think a lot of just our digitalization of society, we're just drifting. And now I might be in rural Oklahoma that's conservative, but in my little TikTok group, I've got my little trans group right here, and we're we're right here together. But I don't really talk to my parents. I just go to my own room. So, like, they're there, but they're not really impacting me the same way. Whereas previously, even neighbors across the street, or your state, your country in general, like, yeah, you've always had people more left, more right, but by and large, you're all kind of right here.
Mhm.
So we shared a lot of those more values. Um, and now I'm like some of those super liberal people in California, like, I don't know what values I share at all. I it's really sad. And I think that's how we can dehumanize each other, because we don't share any of the same values.
Yeah, and I think that's also what's changed is we've been taught to other each other.
Yeah.
Um, we've been othered, and really the left has done that more to the right, but then the right, I feel like, is forced to do it because they're being called all these names and ostracized. So it's happening on both ends, but I personally believe it's starting more from the left. But that wasn't the case when I was growing up. You know, in the 80s, like someone had a Bush or Reagan sign, and that was fine. Your next door neighbor had a Reagan sign. You weren't like, oh my God, a white
Yeah.
supremacist. You were like, oh, okay, so they like Republicans, and you know we're voting for the Democrats, and that was just normal. And
Yeah.
it's just not like that anymore. They've
No.
the news tells everybody that we're white supremacists. I mean, I was for recalling Gavin Newsom. I was a QAnon white supremacist Nazi. And I mean, that's what I was told, even though I'm Jewish. So,
Well, I mean, Larry Elder was the blackface of white
face of white
supremacy.
supremacy. Even though he had that woman like with a gorilla mask egg him, that like, no one even cared about that. Yeah.
No.
So yeah, it's insane. So that stuff wasn't happening before, like it is now. So, I personally just thought people were smarter than that and wouldn't take that bait. But now I'm realizing that they
Yeah.
do, and they have, and the programming is deep, unfortunately.
And I think that's another kind of piece of action there is, aside from just your family, those people around you speaking up, saying things, doing more connective pieces, like going and, I don't know, baking a cake for your neighbor or something. Just little things. Those things that we've taken for granted for so long. Those aren't just, oh, that's kind of a nice thing to do. Like they keep communities going. So don't devalue just those little
It
connective pieces
humanizes
like that.
us, yeah.
Yes.
And California, it's so funny when you said that. I was like, oh my gosh, it's just so not like that here. You're, and I am. We are working on actually moving out. So because yeah, that's been my contention is the people it's just are just much less friendly here. And,
Yeah.
you know, honestly, it's not even just California, it's the area of California, because if I actually go to a different area of California that's not as liberal, it's actually still even friendlier there.
Mm.
But it's you can do it here, but it's not common, and it's just not
Yeah.
it's not in our culture here, unfortunately.
Yeah. And that's another important piece there too. Hey, I've even given some quips towards you of, hey, we're good in Oklahoma for the most part. I know I kind of dogged on some things here, but comparatively, it's not even close. It's very, very different. Um, but if you're in San Francisco or wherever, and you don't have the means to get out, you have to have a different expectation level. If my expectation, I'm going to speak out, and the Bay Area is going to be waving American flags, they're Trump, MAGA, Republican, like, not going to happen. But could you make that impact of somebody on your street, or the person you go to work with, or your kids, something like that? Yeah, you'll make an impact. It's just not going to be the same level. And every family has to judge that differently. Because if I'm in California with my family, I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing everything I can to get out, because there is a degree that your sanity is important.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be tough here. But we actually, I do have a group of conservative friends here. There's a group where they've really, we've worked hard to find each other and get together and do things together. So, despite the fact that I'm in this heavily blue area, there are a group of more conservatives that get together and support each other. So we're not so alone. So
Yeah.
that's great. We have a community.
Community, and that's the word, is find community. In your case, in this situation of, with kind of like-minded political ideology type of people, important. But find a community wherever. Like, if you go volunteer at your local dog shelter, I don't care what it is, like, have community. This mindset, particularly post COVID, that I can just be on my phone and be on Twitter or TikTok or whatever, and that's community. Uh,
In
it's
person.
there is an aspect that okay, I can reach out like, "Hey, you and I, we found each other that way." Like, there's an aspect that can be helpful, but boy, it is no replace of any type of real physical face-to-face community. You can't digitize that.
No. And I actually don't even really believe in Zoom therapy for that reason. So, yeah, I think in
Uh,
person is way underrated. We need more in person, face to face contact for sure.
it is important. It is important to have that connection. And again, don't devalue that. Don't devalue having that conversation with your mailman. My
Yeah.
mailman actually goes to church with me, so he'll send me a text if I have a big package or something. So I have a little bit of an in with my mailman. But you might just talk about the weather. You don't have to talk about a whole lot, but you're talking. You're connecting. You can't just be alone all day. You just can't. Nobody can.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't underestimate the value of human connection.
Yes, absolutely, spot on. And I think that's something that through your work, and I'm trying to do through mine as well. Of emphasizing that active part of connecting with other people, speaking. Not just speaking your truth, speaking the truth, being truthful. Um, it truly isn't that complicated. That's all it takes. And what like we were talking about before we recorded, it's so fun to be on this side now of having some of these connections, having some of these people like, "Oh, wow. Hey, yeah, let's
Oh, like
connect."
I found somebody. You
E
found
e
somebody. And,
ex
it's
e
like the
exactly.
Divergent movie. I don't know if you ever saw those, like where everybody's following the orders, and then there's the divergent people that
Yeah.
don't follow the orders or that can think for themselves. That's what I feel like. We're like the divergence.
Absolutely. And those people are there. They're in your hometown. That they are. Um, they might be in your house. They might be down the street from you. But we are such like you're talking about. We're such followers in a lot of ways, and that's working to the negative. But it can work to the positive too. That if you start leading, you start saying something, you're going to get people that follow you that direction too. It just takes that spark.
Yep, that's it. Courage is courageous.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Well, any other things that you would really want to make sure that kind of my audience knows about you, or any other projects, things like that, that you would like to tell people about?
Well, I did write this parent's guide to mental health, so I'll just talk about that briefly. So, because I've worked in with mostly teenagers, families, in school settings and in clinics for so many years, and as a supervisor for other social workers and therapists, I can't work full time. I still have some chronic pain. I can't carry a caseload. I was kind of at a loss after the whole losing my job thing. So I'd realized what would be my place to kind of educate and be a consultant for parents. So I actually put together a whole online curriculum. I have
Mhm.
11 classes now on different topics, and basically to help parents understand what is appropriate therapy. And I
Mm,
mean, I don't tout exactly what a certain type of therapy is better than another, because there are lots of different types of therapy, and part of it is for you to figure out what's the
sure.
right fit for you. But I also talk about what are red flags and, like crossing boundaries and
Mm,
not having the therapist not using you or your child for their ego, things like that. So I wrote about suicide prevention and how to assess for suicide, like real suicidality, since that's now being used as a weapon to
right.
parents because they're told, well, your kid will kill themselves if you don't affirm their gender identity.
Yes.
So let's learn how to actually assess for suicide. And it's pretty easy if the person says they don't have a plan or means. I mean, that's really a basics, but I wrote a whole long lesson about it. And then if you do need to call 911 or you need to get help, what to expect. Like, for example, they usually do handcuff you if you are suicidal for your own safety. So just a lot of the inside information that I know as a mental health professional that someone who's not been in the field or not been exposed to it wouldn't know, so that you know what to expect and you know how to advocate for what you should expect,
Yeah.
and how to find an appropriate therapist that's not going to indoctrinate your child and not going to shut you out from the therapy, because that's important. Unfortunately, the agenda is to shut parents out and divide families, which to me is
Yeah.
wild. As someone who's really been a big proponent of family therapy and connecting families, because of course we therapists are only in a family's life for a brief time.
Sure.
So that's on the truthfultherapist.org. And that's been my big project. And
Yeah.
I'm providing consultations too for parents. So if they're seeing a therapist and they think, is this kosher or is this not? Or they're looking for a therapist and they want to know kind of what screening questions to ask, which is actually in my thing. But I've noticed a lot of parents don't want to sit and read it themselves. They just want to talk to somebody that they believe is
Yeah.
sane. So I can provide that for them too. I don't provide therapy for people, and I don't believe in doing that remotely anyway. But what I do is basically help them figure out and find a therapist for them and their families.
I
So that's what
think
I'm
that's
doing.
such a neat idea, because yeah, that's something that I'm actually kind of exploring on my own. Not really exactly what you're doing, but how to expand beyond just the therapy room. That which is important, sure, but there's other aspects that we can be helping people, and that's a great one. Like you and I, we kind of know the process pretty
Yeah,
well because
we
we've
would
been
take it
in it.
for granted, right? Like we
Yeah.
assume we know, and I realize other people don't know. And that's how I think a lot of families are getting manipulated to
Hmm.
make these decisions. And you've got all these
Yeah.
experts telling them you need to do this, or you need to put them on this medication, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. And
Yeah.
I'm not even here to say what is the right thing to do, but just help them be able to make an informed decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great because yeah, so many parents they're so confused, they don't know what to do. And I've heard that some here lately, which blows my mind too. I actually don't work with minors too terribly often. They're just not um I like them in a personal life, but therapeutically it's just never really been my thing as much. But when I have, of course you talk with the parents. Like
Of course,
why
it's
why wouldn't you?
malpractice not to. That's what's
Yeah.
about this, because you're not taking the word from a child. Even a really, let's say, good child or an honest child, you're still not, because you still need to hear other points of view. You need to hear the family's point of view, or you need to hear about things that happened before the child was verbal. I mean, you
Yeah.
just need to know and you need to talk to them about medical issues or other things that the child just wouldn't know about. And also, you need to support the parent. You need to know what's
Yeah.
happening with the parent to know what's happening with the child. So, if the parent's secretly planning a divorce with their spouse, then maybe they're having stress that's being displaced onto the child. You need to know that to be able to treat
Yeah.
that child. That will give you a lot of clinical insight. How are you supposed to have clinical insight without talking to a parent? Blows my mind, and that's happening now more and more, ever so common, because
Yeah.
parents are being demonized or being told that they're bigots if they're not. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that said,
And let's just say, for example, the parents are bigots, like, or they're terrible. Like, even the bad parents need to be involved, however you want to measure
yeah,
that.
you're only gonna be there for an hour. Like, yeah, that's crazy to me
Mhm.
that would happen. But I've been hearing the same thing, more and more. Why you would not involve them? That anytime I've had a minor, I've at least offered end of session. Hey, um, here's kind of some of the issues we've been talking about, or we'll still respect some of that confidentiality, but can talk in generalities of, hey, what's your viewpoint?
That's
Heard
it.
that heard we had a hard day at school today. What did you hear? Like, it's not that
Yeah,
difficult to involve them.
there's a way to do it, because the therapist will say, now the leftist therapist mostly will say something effective. I need to be able to gain trust with your child, so I can't talk to you or I can't tell you anything. And that's not true. So that's what I go into, is what is some information that you can get. Maybe you're not going to get every detail. Maybe you're not going to get who they have a crush on right now or something like that.
Yeah.
But you can get general information. You can get, what are the treatment goals? What are you working on? What are some
Yeah.
of the concerns you're seeing? What are the what's happening in the session? Is the child talking or not? Are they engaging or are they not engaging? I mean, this is information the parents allowed to have. And the fact that they're saying, well, no, we can't say anything is just wrong. And I want the
Yeah.
parents to know that. And if they have a therapist treating their child that says, no, I can't talk to you or I can't tell you anything, I want them to know that that's wrong and to challenge that if they still like the therapist at all, or fire that therapist and find
Yeah.
somebody else to watch
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So,
Good. No, I think having that, m- just in general, having more parent, not just authority or kind of that power, although that's important, but confidence. I think that's what a lot of parents are lacking is
that's it.
confidence, and you're helping supply that to them.
That's it. I want to empower the parents. That's exactly it. You put it well. I want them to know that to not blindly trust the experts and to arm them with some information and with maybe some language. You throw some therapy terms at them so that
Yeah.
they, like, so that they're not, because I think therapists actually do that. They use therapy words at a parent to intimidate
Yeah.
them, right?
Yep.
And I I want the parents to not feel intimidated, especially if maybe they're a parent that didn't go to college, so then they might feel insecure. Well, probably in a lot of ways, if you didn't go to college, you're probably a lot smarter than a therapist that did go to college. And so
Yes.
please don't let that be a source of intimidation. But I also do have a wealth of experience in the mental health field, I think before it went woke and crazy. So I want to provide that to the parents so they know what is appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is very, very needed. And like I said, I really appreciate the outside the box a little bit of thinking there. I think that's something that the world of therapy, psychology, social work, that whole area really struggles with. Here's how we do things, and that's it. You're a
Yeah,
counselor, you counsel, and you go no further than that. There's other ways. We just have to think outside the box a little bit.
I think I was forced to because of my circumstances.
Yeah.
You know, I probably would be doing what you're doing otherwise.
Which is interesting. It's almost kind of like you're doing a project or art project or something, and those restrictions can actually really bring out the creativity. Um, in
Yeah,
your case, you didn't really want to have to do that, but I think it's good for the parents that you're impacting to show that yeah, there does need to be kind of this guidebook, some inside scoop to not just trust any and every therapist your child talks to.
exactly. When you said that, you reminded me of like Jaws, right? Jaws turned out to be an amazing movie because the mechanical shark didn't work.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, and it's similar kind of in my life. Did not have this idea at all to be in this type of position. Never had any desire to do a podcast to talk to people, things like that. But different restrictions, different things that happen, kind of forced down this lane, and it's fun. It's sometimes these challenges they turn into being a really fun project to get to enjoy doing.
Definitely. And your voice, my voice, our voices are really important because there are not many of us. Excuse me. There's not. No,
You're
there's not many of us out there. And then those that are out there are silenced. So
Yes, yes.
I'm gonna
So
get a
no,
drink.
you're fine. And I do think for both of us having our experience of, with mandates, that does harden you up a little bit. That does kind of suck some of that naivety out of you, and says it's it's time to go to battle. We got to go now. And
Oh, I'm coughing.
you're okay.
I don't know if you can edit that out.
um, and
Yes, definitely.
and I think it's important for those of us that have been in that position to say, okay, that wasn't fun. That was not a desirable time, but it happened. And let me share my experience. And like you're saying, there's other people that have similar experiences. And if you haven't, here are some ways that maybe we could help prepare you for. I, I think if you have any semblance of conservative values at all, not even just saying vote Republican, just you believe there's an objective truth,
Yeah.
you're going to face discrimination, some type of issue down the road. You probably have already, but let's just stop trying to avoid it. And how can we equip ourselves? How can we deal with it?
Yeah. And be more honest with ourselves and have integrity, right? And not be afraid.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Where can people find you at?
So you found me on Twitter. I'm a red pilled LCSW. So at red pilled LCSW. On Instagram, at the Truthful Therapist. It's actually the .truthful therapist. I have a Substack called Pam the Truthful Therapist. I'm on YouTube as the Truthful Therapist. Those are the main places.
I'm imagining if most people search the Truthful Therapist, they're probably going to find a lot of your stuff.
Yeah. You can just, the Truthful Therapist, or if you just put in my name, which is Pamela Garfield Yeager, I think you'll find me now. Just funny that my family hasn't Googled me and seen everything I'm doing, but it'll happen eventually.
I would imagine that would. Okay. Well,
It'll be fun.
I'll link all of that down in the description below. Definitely feel free to look at all of the cool stuff that she's doing out there. And yeah, I really appreciate your time and just the great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for giving me a voice and for connecting.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you take care.
Yes.
The last word. Today's last word is persistence. The reason why I'm choosing this word is, as I mentioned earlier, my wife is pregnant. Now, many women face difficulties when they're pregnant with illness, morning sickness, just discomfort growing a little child inside of you. However, my wife faces more difficulties than most women. You see, for her previous two pregnancies, she stayed sick pretty much the entire 9 months. To put it in my wife's words right now, a good day for her is if she only vomits 1 to 4 times a day. Granted, that is a good day. So think of what a bad day is, more like 9 to 12 times in a day. It's really rough on her. But nevertheless, she persisted. You've heard that phrase before, right? She continues on because she has a beautiful why at the end. Why does she continue being sick? She has a wonderful child. Our new son is inside of her. So she's going to persist to provide care for that boy. And whenever he comes out of her, she's going to be so excited to get to hold him and to love him, and it's going to be worth it. But again, she has a reason why she is persisting through what she's going through. I don't know what struggles you're going through. Maybe you're dealing with the death of a loved one, going through grief. Maybe you're dealing with depression or anxiety. I'm not sure. But if you don't have a reason why you are going through what you're going through, it's going to be hard to persist. Let's take an example of somebody that wants to run a marathon. I don't know if any of you listening have ran a marathon before, but that is 26.2 miles. If you've never ran anywhere close to that amount, that's a long, long ways to go. And if, let's say, that runner is in the middle of the race and they're 15 miles in, they have a lot of reasons why they should quit, right? They're hungry, they're tired, they're just done, they want to go home. So why not just quit? They would feel better in the moment, right? Well, their why might be, I want to make it. I want to get one of those 26.2 stickers to put on the back of my vehicle. Maybe they've ran marathons before and they want to get their personal best time. But that why is what pushes them through that difficult moment. So I encourage you, if you're going through something hard right now, ask yourself, why? Why am I persisting? What is keeping me going? And what's on the other side? I'm not going to guarantee you if you come up with the answer to these questions that you're not going to have any problems. You more than likely will continue to have issues. But knowing why you're doing what you're doing is going to help you to continue pushing on and make it through this struggle. Thanks again for joining me on another episode of the Truth and Grace Counseling Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and enjoyed the content that I make, please consider giving this video or podcast a like. leaving me a good review on any of the podcast platforms that you listen to this on. I really appreciate you hanging out with me, and I'll talk to you guys again in a couple weeks.